So let's start off by talking about the Bald Eagle Ranch and Conference Center, and it's for veterans.
And their families.
And their families.
Yes.
So let's start with why. Why do you have this, this center?
It was really just a dream, and when the opportunity came to turn the farm into something, that decided doing something that's really positive. And we have such a need for vets, not just returning vets from Afghanistan or Iraq, but also vets of all wars. I had mentioned that, for example, we are finding that many veterans from even going back as far as World War II are just now realizing that they have post-traumatic stress disorder. And the veterans who are coming back from overseas have it in much greater percentage than we had thought ever would happen because of multiple deployments and other things that have happened.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about PTSD, because I think it's something that we sort of talk about, but I'm not sure if we really understand what it is and how dramatic an effect it has on these veterans.
Many people think that PTSD is just something for veterans.
Right.
But PTSD can happen from a motor vehicle accident. It can happen from a sexual assault, a rape, physical violence, all kinds of things. Right now what we're hearing a lot, though, is the returning veterans and why they have PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder, and some people don't even want to call it a disorder, is a reaction to things that have happened outside the self. And it's not where you have an internal malady or something, it's you have experienced something, whether it's exposure to violence, whether it's exposure to an atrocity, whether it's exposure to seeing your best friend die right in front of you being blown up by an IED. It's just, anything like that. And when you have PTSD, you have to meet certain criteria that have been established for what PTSD is. And these are criteria of intrusive symptoms, avoidance symptoms, and arousal symptoms. Intrusive symptoms such as nightmares, intrusive thoughts, flashbacks that we hear about, avoidance symptoms that you don't want to be around certain things or certain people. You hear a sound, you duck and cover, and you try to avoid social activities and events. You may numb out. You have the 1,000-yard stare where people are suddenly there and they're sitting there and all of a sudden they're not there. That their body is, but their mind is somewhere else, and identifying that. And the arousal symptoms are sleep problems, they're attentional problems, they're anger and irritability, they're hypervigilance, which if you're with a veteran, you always make sure they get to choose where you sit in a movie theater, in a restaurant, because they got to have their back against the wall and they have to watch,
Right.
So, and then startle. Those are kind of the things that go into PTSD.
Okay.
And it's normal for many situations.
Right, when you've been through something that traumatic. So, Hank, you're a Vietnam veteran.
Yes, I am.
Tell me, you've had experience with PTSD personally, so tell me how it affected your life. Well,
it didn't seem to affect my life until I became older. It did to a certain extent while I had a full-time career in a professional capacity in Washington, D.C. And I had a lot of responsibility with complex issues at a high level at my agency. I was married, had children. They were very active with sports. I was asked to coach. And that kept me very busy. I always had to have 2 cars, very serviceable all the time, so that my wife and I could take the kids to their various practices every day.
Right.
And games and competitions. Well, I was so busy, every now and then I would have an intrusive thought or flashbacks at night, but it was rare. And it wasn't until I retired from the federal government and all of a sudden I didn't have 1,000 decisions to make every day.
Right.
And my children were out of the nest. They were away at school or on their own. And so it started coming back to me.
Wow.
Flashbacks, nightmares, and I hypervigilance, a lot of different things that, and so forth. So that's when it affected me, I guess, in my late 50s and early 60s.
Okay.
Initially.
So it's not something that you think you've dealt with it, because I think you're much like my father was. He was always busy, busy, busy. He was always taking more classes, getting more degrees, getting another job, a better job, just incredibly active. And it sounds like he did a lot of the same things you did, and just threw himself into anything but memories of Vietnam.
That's right. I challenged myself. I went to school at night for graduate work and more things in addition to that. I owned an aircraft. I owned 3 different airplanes in succession and flew. In that regard, that took me back to my Air Force days.
Right.
I just had to keep challenging myself.
Interesting. Gosh, you sound so much like my father. I am learning so much. That's fascinating. Okay, so we've got a little bit about what PTSD is and how it affects people. So tell me about this beautiful place and this beautiful oasis that you've created for these wounded veterans.
And we're in the process of creating.
In the process
in
of
the
creating.
process. It's still, we have our vision, we have our mission statement, but the Veterans Administration has been primarily the organization that's done a lot of work with veterans. And right now there's something like over 800,000 applications for service-connected disabilities behind. And it's really hard. And one of the things that the VA has said is you have to talk about what happened to you and change your behavior. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy, and this is what they see is the evidence shows that this is the one thing that works. Well, we think that there are other things you can do too, and other people are beginning to see there are other things that veterans can use that are outside the box. And so the ranch is going to be outside the box. I will do the cognitive behavioral therapy stuff in my office in Warrenton, but we're going to be doing other things. We're going to have a whole myriad of activities and events. We're going to have discussion groups. We will have give workshops for veterans, for their families, for clinicians to know, and we're going to look at beyond cognitive behavioral therapy. For example, one of the things we're going to do is do equine on the ground therapy using horses with veterans and their families. The Power of the Herd is a book by Linda Cohenoff, and I just came back last week from a training and we'll be doing an apprenticeship program with her so that eventually we will be able to teach equine therapy at the ranch as well as do it with people and again, this is not riding, this is on the ground work with horses. We will have hopefully aquaponics, which is sustainable farming. We're going to have opportunities for veterans to be trained in auto repair, in other vocational activities, in farming, in haying, in working with horses.
So I think this is really fascinating because they'll be able to, in a way, take advantage of the busy work to keep their minds occupied, but still do the hard stuff. That's hard. Still do the hard work that's involved with really facing head on.
And they're going to be participating in research as well with questionnaires and some of the PTSD specific instruments so that we can measure, and how are we doing to help them and to show from the evidence that these other things work as well.
What a great idea. I think it's so important also for veterans to be around each other.
Yes.
And to have that camaraderie. And sometimes I think about a veteran who's been to Vietnam or Iraq or Afghanistan, and then they come home and their world is just completely different. And you're just sort of dropped right back into your life and you're expected to go along, like everything is normal when nothing is anything like it was for the last year or however time you were away.
And if you have been really ingrained in the value systems of the military, for example, some of the Army values, of loyalty and duty and selfless sacrifice and so on, and you come back into a world like we're having and experiencing, you don't fit.
Right.
And so you need a place where you can go. We'll have an exercise course. We're opening it up as a source for the Boy Scouts to do Eagle projects.
Wonderful.
There. So all kinds of things.
And you even said you were talking about a sweat lodge.
Yes, a sweat lodge in the back, a boot hill, a cemetery, of creating a cemetery where you can come in and bury your demons. Because
What a
so
great
many
idea.
times the demons follow you. And literally, if you ask veterans, where are some of the ones who have died? They'll say they're standing right beside me or they're right behind me. And they need a place to deposit that
Yeah.
and stay. We'll have archery, basketball, a full-size soccer field. I mean, all kinds of things there that are
This
different.
is super. And I know that the Home Depot was instrumental recently in helping you with the center, right?
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Sure.
Sure.
We spoke to Home Depot in Warrenton, and they were very helpful. They suggested, when they found out about the ranch, that they had a community grant program that would be sponsored by the local store in Warrenton, and they asked us to fill out some applications, and we did, about our need and what the kind of activities that they could do to help. And they came out in July for one day with 35 volunteers and about $5,000 worth of material. They spent all day there. Yeah. They did landscaping. They did work inside the ranch house, and it was just wonderful. Yeah, it was just wonderful. And we still owe them a tremendous debt of gratitude.
Right.
And are still in contact with them. They check on us from time to time.
How wonderful.
Right.
So, and you were saying that you will be asking for volunteers from the community at the center to get help with, what types of things are you going to need help with?
Oh, we need boards to put up for fences, because we're going to be finding rescue horses to come in to train to be in the program, and we need to have our fences, put up. We need some work done on the barn. We need, so people can do that. If somebody wants to donate building a deck, or designing and building a fire pit, or putting flooring in the downstairs part of the house. I mean, anything like that.
We also need a tractor.
Yes.
We don't need a new one, but we need one that can help us with farming around there, to care for the property, and to bush hog and to hay, and so that we can also teach veterans about that as well. It's a kind of a work project for them to help us and help them.
I think it's great that not only are you helping them rehabilitate themselves emotionally and mentally, and giving them things to keep themselves occupied, but in the process of doing that, you're giving them marketable skills
Absolutely.
to get back into the workforce.
And you know what a lot of them will like to do is, like me, is to give back to those that served.
Right.
Yeah.
I think this is fantastic. Yeah. So how would people get in touch with you if they wanted to volunteer time or money or a tractor, anything like that? How would they what number would they call?
Probably the best would be to call my office, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
In Warrenton at 540-341-7339. That's my private practice office. But go to the U.S. Vet Source, VETSOURCE.org website, I think would probably even be better. And it'll have all the information to contact us, and as well as our CEO. And just see what we're about, what we're doing, and come out, take a look and wander around. We have 23 acres.
And it's near Inlet, you said, correct?
Yes.
Yes. A little bit east of Culpeper, just about 2 miles east of the Culpeper Walmart.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
On
Yeah.
Brandy Road, off
Right.
of Brandy
Off of
Road.
Brandy, on Glenella.
Yes.
Glenella Road.
I know where that is.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
I'm just really moved by the work that you're doing, and I
Thank
wish
you.
you the best of luck And hopefully we can get some response from
Right.
the community through this interview as well.
I'd love
hope
it.
so.
That would be so great.
We'd
Mary
love to
Beth,
have.
Hank, thank you. And thank you for your service again. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all the wonderful work you're doing.
Thank you.
And you stay tuned, please. We've got more coming up on It's All Local.